Good morning, Southern California. I'm John Baldwin with John Hart Real Estate, and today is March 9th, 2022. Have a nuts and bolts topic for us today. I want to talk about buyer contingencies. In the grand scheme of things, a buyer contingency is really the buyer's exit ramp from a contract. It's the way you get out of a deal. So the buyer's offer is contingent on, basically inspecting the property, getting a loan, and have the property appraising at the contract value. The great thing about the inspection contingency is as sort of your blanket coverall, like you can just change your mind. Like, look, the house isn't going to work for us. We've decided now that we've been here a little bit, it's just not going to work out. The floor plan, the condition, it's your blanket get out of jail free card. It's the like we just want to get out of this deal, and I decided there's too much road noise, or there's too much work that needs to be done, or it's really the investigation about the usability of the property for you, but also the condition of the property. And let's say we get to a point where it's like, no, you love the house, but there are certain repairs that need to be done, and if the repairs or the credits or the price reduction doesn't happen, it gives you an exit out of the contract as well. Because we've talked about repair requests in the past. So when you make that request for repair, and if you and the seller can't come to an agreement, then you can use the inspection contingency to cancel the deal. The loan contingency is a little more specific. With the loan contingency, you really do need to not qualify for the loan. It needs to, debt to income ratio. Frequently, people will forget about, like, oh yeah, that student loan I've had for 15 years that it's an auto pay and I never have to think about it. That kind of thing is frequently forgotten, and that can really mess up a buyer's debt to income ratio because they forgot to factor in a two, three, four, $500 a month payment that's been on auto pay for a decade. There are other things, sometimes it's you bought a car in the middle of escrow. I had that happen to me once, and we were able to salvage that deal because it was an investor. We flipped the contract over to his brother. His brother closed the deal, but that was almost a major fiasco because all of a sudden in the middle of escrow, the guy's FICO score dropped like a rock because he just took out another loan on a car, and it messed up his debt to income ratio too. So not only did his FICO score drop, but his debt to income ratio dropped or rose. It basically screwed up the deal. But we were able to salvage that one. So there are lots of little things that can blow up a loan, and that's why I like lenders who do what I call front loading the paperwork. They know what paperwork they're going to need. They know they're going to need all these bank statements, tax returns. They know the paperwork they're going to need. So a good lender will front load all that paperwork and ask for it at the beginning of the process and won't be scrambling for it at the end of the process. So that's one thing. And then the last contingency, the big one I think, is really the appraisal. And it used to be, we had a little hack that we used for a while. We didn't use it a lot, but it was one of those that we could say, look, we know we have a lot of competition on this house. We have, let's say, 10 other offers we're competing against. In order to make our offer more attractive, let's remove the appraisal contingency and not worry about appraisal, because in this rising market, we know, the math is going to work out. The appraisal is probably going to come in. We also knew, based on the previous versions of the real estate contract, that you could effectively use the loan contingency as an appraisal contingency. Now, in the current version of the contract, the Department of Real Estate has caught on to that little hack, and they have specifically put language in that you cannot use the appraisal contingency, you cannot use the loan contingency as an appraisal contingency. And that was, it's one of those, like, because the loan is dependent on an appraisal for most loans, unless you could cover the gap between the appraised value and the contract price, that loan contingency was effectively also an appraisal contingency. But now that they've specifically written into the contract that you cannot use the loan as an appraisal contingency, if you don't qualify based on an appraisal, that creates a totally different can of worms that you're going to have to deal with. and you potentially could be putting your deposit in jeopardy if you've removed that appraisal contingency up front, because it's one of those there when we could use the loan as an appraisal contingency, we would get your deposit back 100%. But now with the current language on the contract, I would be a little more leery about removing the appraisal up front unless you were rock solid knowing that it's going to appraise, or that you have the funds to cover any gap between the appraised value and the contract price. So these are the things you need to give me a call about. 213-973-3777. We can talk about offer strategy. We can talk about what these contingencies mean in reference to a specific property, because every deal is going to be specific to the property and the people involved in the property. So always think about, it's not a blanket statement on every real estate transaction. You need to look at the specifics for that deal and who are the people involved in it. So give me a call, 213-973-3777, and let's get your house sold.